is going on? Um, Started this off as like, fuck your trauma. So with even more emphasis, that was a conversation that I had with Meg this morning. Uh, for some reason, here it's my birthday. So happy birthday to me. Trauma's on the mind. And trauma's really only on the mind because I am seeing it everywhere. Everybody's got some fucking trauma. I keep seeing, and to me, it's like trauma is like the new vulnerability. If you've been in social media the past couple of years, is uh, vulnerability was huge when Brene Brown came out with that, and everybody was trying to be more vulnerable, expose themselves, and now it's this trauma, um, and everybody seems to be identifying with their trauma, identifying with the hurt, identifying with what needs to be healed or wants to be healed, uh, because that's, I mean, how do we heal our trauma, right? Let's heal that trauma. And I get it, right? You've got a story, you've had an experience, something that's happened to you in your life that's been less than ideal, and it's become a part of your identity. This is why I am how I am. This is how I got here. I'll tell you, years ago, I had a coach, and he asked me what it was about me that made me different. Why should people pay attention to what it is that I'm doing? I was like, well, because my story. He's like, that's great. Everybody's got a story. And I was like, cold, cold fucking piece. But sometimes you need to hear that. Sometimes you need to hear that your story is just that. That is your story. And I'm not going to say that these experiences were awesome. I'm not going to say that, yeah, that you should have trauma in your life. But I will say that to me, and again, it's one person's perspective. Um, we also take a look at psychology and psychoanalysts and all that other stuff. All that shit is still pretty much emerging, like less than 200 years old in like a practice. So take all the even that with a grain of salt as it continues to develop and as we continue to learn more and more about really who we are, how we function, the way that we happen, and all that other jazz. But trauma is self defined. And I'll give you a kind of an example of a traumatic event that's happened last night at our house. Liam wasn't able to find a rock. Dude, he's like 9 years old. Wasn't able to find a rock. I was like, all right, well, you can't find the rock. Go look in your room. Go look for it. Because I'm not insensitive, but at the same time, I don't know where the kids put all their shit. And at some point, they need to figure out where it is. That's what was going through my head. So, go find your shit. Happy to help when you need some actual help. And again, I'm sure I'm causing, some type of shit in that. But, it turned out he couldn't find it, right? A little bit later, heard him crying with like Meg and Finn, and it was like this thing. It's kind of grew larger and larger and larger. And finally, I was just like, fuck it, let's go help find this fucking rock, right? I mean, look, just being honest with you here. So I go up the steps. I'm like, let's go find the rock. And at some point, I was like, it's just a rock, man. I get it. It sucks to lose something, but it's quite literally just a rock. And I realized in that moment that it was insensitive. I'm not trying to be a dick. So I went upstairs. I'm like rooting through all of his shit. He's like, I think it's in a drawer. So I'm like, plowing through his drawers and trying to find it. Can't find it. He's still crying, and it's a big mess. And we get to the point where what happened? You couldn't find it. And I was like, look, buddy. So I was like, first of all, I was like, what's the significance of this rock to you? Like, why is this rock significant? And I think he'd said something along the lines of I got this rock with you, right? Found this rock with you, and you know, he just loved the rock, and and trying to add some levity to the situation and trying to break through uh, the trauma, as it were, of the moment. I was like, well, that makes sense. You found the rock with me, and I get it now. And it took a moment for me to get there and help to understand the significance of that moment for him. It continued throughout the evening. He continued to cry, continued to be upset. There was other things, I got to imagine there's other things that happened. And eventually Meg did find the rock and save the evening. And I spent some time with Liam just holding onto the rock and laying around and watching the show and letting him cry through it, right? And not chastising him for, crying, because I felt like he needed to let a lot of things go. And I share the story because years from now, and I don't know, that's going to be a moment in his life. Traumatic is traumatic. Your trauma, maybe you didn't win an auction and get the Gucci bag, right? Your trauma could be you got let go from a job. Your trauma could be you lost your mother. Uh, and the thing is, you know, again, it's kind of self-defined. And right now, it seems like everybody's just allowed, or even being encouraged, to go seek trauma, to go find your trauma, go find your trauma, heal your trauma. And I would encourage you to absolutely seek healing. There was a book that I was, and I still am a huge fan of it. It's called The Science of Getting Rich. And in that book, it talks about, because you don't solve poverty by focusing on poverty, right? It's like you don't solve the problem by focusing on the problem. You solve the problem by focusing on the solution. What's on the opposite side of that problem, right? What is it going to look like when that is no longer a problem? NLP does this very well in limiting beliefs, right? Your trauma, like it or not, may be one of your, and I'm not trying to be insensitive here, but it may be one of your limiting beliefs. What happens maybe if you translate that word trauma to experience? You had a less than ideal experience. You had this experience. How are you going to use that? What happens inside of that experience that maybe could propel you in your future? Maybe you could encourage people to, hey, trying to think of a good one here. Uh, but how can you encourage people through what you've learned through your trauma? Or how could you let somebody know that, hey, these actions that you do, while they may seem like, I don't know, small, may have this enormous impact? And the thing here is also not to be, it's to be sensitive, but not overly sensitive, where everything turns into trauma, right? Um, and I want to kind of highlight this with a small story. The story of two brothers. One brother who goes throughout life, gives back to the community, is heralded. He's super successful in all that he does. And the other brother, he's an alcoholic. He drinks, he does drugs, he's always getting support from the outside and never seems to be able to pull his shit together. Right? And when people talk to them, each of the brothers, the one brother, the very successful one, and people are like, well, how did you get like this? And he goes, well, my dad was an alcoholic, so I didn't want to turn out like that. I used like how I grew up to seek the opposite of that, to turn into the truth of who I am, right? To be who I want to be. And same thing for the other brother. He goes, well, gee, how can we help? How did you end up like this? And how did you get here? He goes, my dad was an alcoholic, so that's how I was raised. That's just all I know, and that's what I became. So you can see right there, these two people have the same experience and they leverage it in different ways. You know, I again, I was just thinking about this morning, and what happens if you had to get on a small flight? What we were just watching, that show Yellow Jackets on Showtime. Pretty traumatic there, right? Experience. But what happens if you hop onto a flight and all your thoughts, all your traumas, everything, all your experiences, you just call them baggage, right? Because that's what we used to call this stuff, and be like, that person's got a lot of baggage. Let's call it baggage. What happens if you label all your experiences baggage, and then you say, all right, well, you can only take so many of these things with you on this flight so that you can live your best life? Are you going to bring your trauma? Are you going to bring the story of how you could be this, but you can't because of this trauma? And I just, again, look, there are some things out there, and there are some things bigger than that definitely need healing. And I'm not saying that that's not true, but how can you make use of your trauma? How can you use it for your benefit? I had a course that I took this earlier this year, Sri Kumar Rao's Creative and Personal Mastery. And in one of those scenarios, it's like it's how to become bigger than the problem. And I guarantee you, I promise you, that you are bigger than your trauma. You are greater than your trauma. And I think the other person that we think about too is like, what about Abe Lincoln? Right? What about Abe Lincoln? If we take a look at of all the setbacks, everything that ever happened to him, right? In 1832, he lost his job and he was defeated for state legislator. 1833, he was failed in business, appointed postmaster of New Salem, Illinois, and it didn't make it. 1835, sweetheart died. 1836, he had a nervous breakdown. 1838, he was nominated for House Speaker, and he was defeated for Speaker. In 1843, defeated for nomination for Congress. 1848, lost renomination. 1849, rejected for land officer. 1854, defeated for U.S. Senate. 1856, defeated for nomination for vice president. 2 years later, he's again defeated for U.S. Senate. And then in 1860, he was elected president. Like, holy shit. Like, what if at any one moment, it was so easy to just attach who you are and your capabilities to any one of those scenarios and just fucking stop. Right? Just let it go. Like, what would have happened if he let his trauma be his identity? And I know a lot, even me, I'm like, well, he'd still be alive. Like, he would have lived longer. True. Even in that sense, right? That kind of takes the opposite approach of, just because these good things happen, are they actually good things? Anyways, that's just kind of my thought this morning. I'm tired of seeing trauma. Everything seems like a trauma right now. It seems like the popular things, all the cool kids have trauma right now. I'd encourage you to take a look at what you're identifying as trauma. And if you need help, absolutely get it. Like, I mean, if it's something that it's not working out well for you, there's all kinds of modalities. If one is not working out for you, please go seek out another, because there is more than one road to travel for healing. Give that example as at our house, we're experiencing healing through tuning forks and acupuncture. Other people may be experiencing it through talk therapy, through psychologists, through psychoanalysts. Other people may be experiencing it through drum circles, through community, through giving back. Whatever it is that you've experienced that's traumatic and you need healing, please absolutely go get it. My only cry out to you is to heal, right? Focus on your healing. Focus on either leveraging your trauma as something that you could do good with, or help catapult you forward in life, and not let it be something that weighs you down and sucks the fucking life out of you, right? That's not what spiritual dope is about, for sure. Spiritual dope is about connecting with your inner greatness, identifying your greatness, being cool with that, and growing that, so that you become connected, and become a fully self-actualized person. And that's for another day, but that's what we're here for. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. I'll talk to you later.